Hello and welcome again to Ballin with Roy and Edwyn. I'm Roy S. Johnson along with my son Edwyn, and we're here today once again to talk about the crazy world of sports from a just generational perspective. How you doing, son?
I'm good, Daddy. How are you?
Good, good. What a crazy week. If some of you guys are wondering why I'm wearing my Stanford shirt, we'll get into that later. But mainly, I don't know what conference we're going to be in, but we'll talk about that later on. We're going to start. Today is the opening games, the opening ceremony for the World Games 2022. I mean, a few years ago, folks didn't even know what the World Games was. Now, this was an event just like the Olympics, played after the Summer Olympics, the year after the Summer Olympics, that includes sports that are trying to get into the Olympics. So these sports are generally not in the Olympics. So you've got world-class athletes. As a matter of fact, 3,600 athletes coming to Birmingham. This is a big deal for the city, the biggest event in this city's history. So please pray for Birmingham. Pray that it comes off without a hitch, and that those korfball players somebody will come home with the gold. But we're rooting for this to be a seamless event. Yes, there are going to be some glitches, but just like other Olympics, we believe that Birmingham is ready for this and will get through it unscathed. So keep that in mind. You got something, look up the games, World Games 2022, starting today here in Birmingham. We want to start out again, just remembering Brittany Griner, who is on trial for bringing hashish oil into Russia. Her trial began last week. Today, she pled guilty in a Russian court, which really doesn't do much. Their courts are a lot different than ours. All of this is hopefully setting up an opportunity for her to come home at some point. People still expect this trial to go on for several weeks, as it does in Russia. But there's a lot of backroom maneuvering going on. Earlier this week, she sent a letter to Joe Biden, President Biden, said, "As I sit here in a Russian prison, alone with my thoughts and without the protection of my wife, family, and friends, Olympic jersey, or any accomplishments, I'm terrified I might be here forever." What are your thoughts, Edwyn, about this situation, and what are you thinking in terms of just really her eventually coming home?
Well, her coach made a recent comment that if she were LeBron, she would have been released. I think I do agree with that. That might be somewhat true, but I mean, for this to continue going for months, and every country's justice system, or if you want to call it a justice system, is definitely different from ours.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping and praying again, because this is going on, I think, long enough. And she did plead guilty. Now, you said it's not going to make much of a difference that she did that, and I hope that's true, because when I did see that at first that she pleaded guilty, I didn't think that was good. But I'm just continuing to hope and pray that, she'll be able to get home to her wife and her family soon.
Yeah, it seems like it's a good move in the sense that, it's setting up something, whether it's a prisoner swap or something that will be diplomatically handled. So by pleading guilty, it puts Russia at ease a bit, as opposed to trying to challenge that she is wrongfully held. Anything that we may believe, this is all a chess game right now. This is a very high stakes chess game. That we hope Brittany Griner will come out ahead in the end and be able to get back home to her family, to her wife, and to her teammates. All right, now we also want to give a big ballin' shout out to Mike Grier. Grier is a former NHL player who this week was named as general manager of the San Jose Sharks, making him the first African-American general manager in the National Hockey League's 105-year history. I know, Edwyn, in your lifetime, you've seen a lot of firsts, so it's almost a pro forma that there is a black GM or a black team president. In your lifetime, there have been many, but here's a first in a major sport. What did you think when you saw that Mike Grier was the first African American general manager in NHL history?
Well, I mean, it's bigger than any other sport, because it is hockey for one, and I don't watch hockey, so I don't know much about the game. But I mean, I know obviously there have been a few African-American former players or current players now. So for that sport, I mean, it is a big deal. That's more barriers continuing to be broken in that regard. And maybe it kind of makes you want to watch it a little bit more just to see how he does as a coach. But I don't really know much about it. I've never watched NHL before, so
yeah, no, it's a hard sport for me to watch. It's very fast, and the puck is very small. I don't know what's going on.
I see they fight a lot. I see they fight all the time.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I'll probably tune it in too to watch the Sharks. I mean, he's got some work to do. This is a team that hasn't made the playoffs now in 3 seasons, but he comes from good stock. He not only himself was a solid player, he was the first African-American born and trained player from the United States. There had been other African-American players, but they went to Canada for most of their early career. He's the first who was born here, who trained here, came up through the system, and then played in the NHL. His older brother, Chris, is the general manager of the Miami Dolphins, and his father was an NFL running back before going into front office jobs with the Patriots, the Texans, and now with the Dolphins. So we wish Mike Grier much success in San Jose. Also, a big Ballin shout out. Birmingham is big today. Big Ballin shout out to the Birmingham Stallions, who are champions of the USFL. This was the first year of USFL 2.0, which was played. All the games were played in Birmingham this year in kind of an incubator format. So all the teams, 8 teams, played here. The championship and semifinals games were played in Canton, Ohio, because they conflicted with the start of the World Games and they needed much more time to prepare. But the Birmingham Stallions only lost 1 game all season, won the semifinals and the championship game. Did you watch much of the USFL, and do you think these players now will get a shot at NFL opportunities, or is this just a chance for them to play football, many of whom had not been able to play? Is this just a chance for them to get to play, strap up the pads and play a little bit more ball?
Well, I didn't watch much of it this season. I wanted to. The first 2 weeks, I watched some games, then I just was not interested, or I was just distracted. I think it is going to be an opportunity for a small amount of players to go to the NFL. I do believe that it's going to be that small percentage. But I really think it's just an opportunity for these other players to play football, the game that they love, and also get paid for it too, because they are getting paid for it between $50,000 and I don't know if it's like 100,000, something like that. Mm-hmm. But I think it is still the opportunity for them to play the game as well. But there are going to be those few players who do get signed to NFL teams.
And the big win is really that the league actually got to the championship game. There were many who, after a few failed starts of spring leagues over the years, didn't think that the league would make it. So it did get to the end of this season and announced that it is coming back for year 2. Of course, the league is owned by Fox Sports, and it was created to give them some spring programming between the Masters and then going into the NFL season. So the fact that they're coming back for year 2, they haven't said how many teams are going to be located in Birmingham versus their own cities, but they're coming back for year 2. So the big win is for the USFL and finish the first season and moving into year 2. So congratulations again, big ball and shout out to the Birmingham Stallions. Now let's get to college football. Yeah. Man, what a week. Some people have called it an explosion. Some people call it an implosion, but it started with the announcement by the Big Ten that UCLA and USC were moving from my beloved Pac-10 to the Big Ten. Of course, this follows a couple of years, or last year, since the announcement that teams were moving from the Big 12 to the SEC. Clearly, you got super conference mania going on here. Now the Big 12 is reportedly in discussions to add up to 6 Pac-12 teams. My problem with this, I don't see my team logo on that graphic. Yeah. I don't know what the Cardinals are doing. There's a lot of speculation and talk, but we've been pretty quiet on this front. There was some talk that maybe the Big 10 is going to make a play for Stanford and Oregon. But right now, we're really in the dark zone as an alum for what our Cardinals are going to do. But what do you think of what's going on in college sports? It's not just college football, but football is driving this engine. Is this an explosion or an implosion for college sports?
I think it's an explosion, and this is business. It's about money. That's what it is first and foremost. I don't know all the details about all the other conferences that make less money the Pac-12 is a Power 5 conference. So it may be inferior to the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12. When it comes to the college football playoffs, the only Pac-12 team that really has an impact is Oregon, even though Utah was good last year as well. I would say that me as a traditional guy, and you've acknowledged that before, I'm for all the conferences being there. I'm for all of those competing. I don't like seeing super conferences per se. I don't mind Notre Dame, 1 year joining the ACC, making it a little bit competitive as opposed to just Clemson being there. Mm-hmm. I'm for that. But this whole either super team or taking teams out, or maybe you might pull a team from a small conference like the MAC, Mountain West, and to replace them. But I prefer to see the Pac-12. I prefer to see the Big 12. I wouldn't really want to see any more teams join the SEC or the Big 10, because you remember a couple years ago too, they ended Big East football too, and that had an impact on basketball also. So I don't like it. But when it comes to money, teams are trying to make certain money and obviously recruit more players, because some teams who are traditional big schools are at the bottom of the recruiting class. I know they're trying to change that also.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. It's definitely about money. The Big Ten's television contract currently pays $430 million a year, while the Pac-12 contract, which runs out at the end of this coming season, garners only $200 million a year. So UCLA and USC are chasing the money, but that's what everybody is doing. But let's think about this. In a couple of years, the Big Ten and the SEC will have 16 teams each. So that's 32 teams right there. Who knows what's going to happen with the Big 12? The numbers won't mean anything anymore. Then there's talk of potentially the ACC having a coast-to-coast kind of league. And who knows, we've got the Pacific Northwest with Oregon. So these conferences used to be geographic. They used to have teams that were basically in the same region. That's gone out the window now. Perhaps with charter flights and things, it's easier, and teams making so much money from the television contracts that they can afford to fly out to California. They can afford to fly out to Oregon. So I think we're going to probably end up with, you've got Power 5 conferences now. You may end up with a Power 3. It's going to be maybe three, maybe four conferences in that top tier that are playing the big Ballin NIL game, that are vying for that national championship every year. So that just may be how it ends up. It'll be tough for those of us who are traditionalists and who kind of go harken back to the days of some traditional rivalries. But it's all about the Bucks, and it's moving. That train has left the station. You'll still see some rivalries. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma are both going to be in the SEC. Obviously, Auburn and Alabama. You still have Michigan State. You'll have Michigan, Ohio State. So you'll still have rivalries. The setup will just be dramatically different, and these schools, the rich, will definitely get richer. But I'm eager to see whether this is the end of the Pac-12 as we know it, or whether it will be morphed and maybe merged into something like the Big 12. So it'll be like the Big Pac. I don't know what they're going to call it, but it'll definitely, I think we've seen the last days of what has been traditionally earlier the Pac-10 and now the Pac-12. All right, on to the NFL. Just before we were preparing, just as we were preparing for this, Baker Mayfield was finally traded to the Carolina Panthers. And you see they've already mocked up him in the uniform. Traded to the Carolina Panthers for one draft pick. They really almost just kind of gave him away. Clearly, since the trade for Deshaun Watson, his value went down. And clearly they just almost had to just give him away to not come to camp with those two quarterbacks. So is this a good move for Carolina, or is it just like, hey, we'll take him and see what happens?
It's a good move for Carolina because they are in need of a quarterback. Sam Darnold is not a guarantee. And I know he had a pretty good, decent season last year. He's not security for your team for a quarterback. Baker's ability still has potential to be a good quarterback, maybe even a very good quarterback. I won't say great. I don't think he's going to win a Super Bowl, come close to winning a Super Bowl, but he has the mechanics still to be good. Yes, absolutely. And I'm not just going to talk about the Heisman or number one pick. I'm not going to talk about that. That's in the past. But his ability, he's clearly a superior athlete to Sam Darnold. I'll give him that too. Also, he can throw the football. Now, they need more weapons. Christian McCaffrey is the best player on that team. Your guy. You have to stand for that. He's going to have to stay healthy. He's still young, and he really has only had one, maybe two good seasons. For some reason, they still put him the number one running back in Madden. He doesn't even play. Okay, fine, cool. He needs to stay healthy. He needs to be available for Baker to help him. They can have that read option going on as well too. You want the crazy side of Baker to come back though. Also, that exciting part too. That's going to give his confidence. That the leadership comes out because he still is a very good leader. Little immaturity here and there, but he's definitely still a leader. I would not deny that too. But I think it's a good move for them because they were in need of quarterback because Cam Newton, apparently he's a free agent. You don't know what you're going to do with him. You might start off with the three of them, and that's honestly going to be very exciting to watch. Hopefully Cam will still be on the roster. You can still go with them three, or you cut one. Maybe you cut Sam Darnold, keep Cam, keep Baker. That's going to be very interesting and exciting to watch.
Yeah, I know you're a Cam fan, and certainly in his heyday, he was one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But he's 33 years old, and I really don't see anything in the wind right now for Carolina to bring him in. It would almost be, and it won't be his fault, but almost kind of a distraction to have him and Baker Mayfield in the same camp. I mean, it could be inspiring for both of them, could motivate both of them. But I don't think Baker Mayfield needs any motivation to come in on fire. And I love that. We want to see some Baker crazy. You want to see a little bit of the wild side of Baker Mayfield come out, and maybe that's what that team needs. So I think it's a great move for Baker Mayfield. Finally gets out of Cleveland, where he did a decent job, helped take that team to a new level. Now they've moved on. He's moved on. Another great weapon, as you mentioned, for Christian McCaffrey to have somebody else for defenses to focus on, which will maybe free him up and help keep him healthy. It doesn't move them to the top tier teams yet. We just have to wait and see. But at least Baker Mayfield has a new home and gives us an opportunity to see whether he still has it enough to lead a team into the playoffs. All right, lots of stuff going on in the NBA. We thought the NBA was done. We have free agency, everyone signing huge contracts. But the big move was this trade. Rudy Gobert going from Utah to the Minnesota Timberwolves, 3-time All-Star, 6-time Defensive Player of the Year. This was a huge trade. Minnesota traded 5 players and 4 draft picks to make this deal and to pair him with Karl Anthony Towns. They now have 2 players with $200+ million contracts. They're the only team in the league with that, totaling $430 million. What do you think of this trade, and what does this do for Minnesota as Utah clearly reboots and starts to rebuild?
It gives Minnesota more size. It does help them be able to compete in the Western Conference. Rudy Gobert is a shot blocker. He's a defender. He's not a big offensive threat. So it does complement Cat a little bit. I don't know how much you can really have him on the floor at the same time because Cat is a center. He's not a power forward, but he is a shooter. He claimed to be the best shooting big man in the game. So 2 different styles of play. You're going to try to get them both on the floor, which you can clearly do. Rudy Gobert, he is young. He is agile. On good nights, he can get 15 a game. He might get, 10 or 12 rebounds. He can get between 3, sometimes 5 block shots a game. So you have a defensive presence with that. I'll give them that. Hopefully, I think it can make them a little bit better. They can climb up to maybe the 7th or 6th seed, depending who they go against. Because if they go up against Dallas, Rudy really can't play, though. Because he can't guard anybody, because that small ball, that is why they beat Dallas. They beat Utah. He can't guard anybody when they spread the ball out and play small ball. That's the only disadvantage that they would have with him also.
I don't think there's any question that they're going to play them both at the same time. I mean, you got 2 guys making $200 million. You're going to put all those bucks out on the floor at the same time. And I know you're not old enough to remember this, but I'm excited by this because it reminds me of the early 80s when the Houston Rockets had Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon on the floor at the same time. I mean, you're talking about twin towers, both top number 1 picks. Sampson being like 7'4", 7'5", Hakeem being 6'11", 2 Hall of Fame centers. We're not saying both these guys are going to be in the Hall of Fame. Rudy Gobert will probably never be in the Hall of Fame. but in an era of small ball, in an era of threes shooting, all over the place, it's great to see some Twin Towers coming back. So I'm excited to see how they can play together. I think Cat's going to move out to power forward and let Rudy, have the low block. And we'll see. They're going to have some matchup problems for other teams. So while it'll be difficult for them to cover in small ball during the playoffs, during the regular season, they're going to be a tough out for team, a tough team to defend because they have so much size. So I'm excited to see it bring a little old school big man ball back to the NBA, which is gone small and gone speedy and gone 3-pointers.
Yeah, no, and I think I'm just thinking too, just when you talk about, because I did think about that, Cat plays the power forward. Let's just say that just happened. It does work well. He's able to come out, shoot, Rudy's down low. That's a possibility. We'll see. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Hopefully they don't take up too much space being on the floor. It does help them against Denver though too, being able to have two guys that can rotate on and off of Jokic. So that's one thing also I would say too.
Okay, great. So let's move on the 4th of July, and this was just a very nice post from Jeannie Buss, the Lakers owner, talking about Kobe Bryant on that holiday. She said, "I miss KB. He would understand and explain everything that I'm not allowed to. Honestly, he was the greatest Laker ever. He understood team over self, meaning the rewards would come if you valued team goals over your own. Then everything would fall into place." Very nice thing of her to say, but man, the greatest Laker ever. That's a pretty big statement. Obviously, being the owner of the team, someone who grew up with that team, she certainly has the right to believe that. But there's a lot of great players that have worn that uniform, from Wilt Chamberlain, obviously, to Kareem, to Magic. But she calls Kobe Bryant the greatest Laker ever. What do you think of this post? And is Kobe the greatest Laker ever in your view?
That was if you have brother sister type of relationship similar to her and Magic, because her and Magic grew up together, in that organization with Dr. Buss, her late father, owning the team. They had a great relationship, friendship, so it definitely means a lot too. I don't think Kobe is the greatest. Top 5, definitely. I think it was 2 years ago she made a tweet saying the top 5 Lakers of all time: Magic, Kareem, Kobe. I think she said Jerry West. I can't remember. And she put LeBron there over Shaq. And LeBron is a great athlete. Arguably, LeBron is the greatest of all time, or some people's top 5. But right now, LeBron, they have one championship. Shaq has 3 Finals MVPs in a row. Shaq, arguably, in my opinion, too, is the most dominant player of all time outside of the other Laker big man, great Wilt Chamberlain. So kind of threw me off a little bit 2 years ago when she said that. But I understand what she's coming saying. Kobe's the greatest. I think, honestly, Magic is the greatest Laker of all time.
Great debate. Of course, all of us who are NBA fans and have been watching the NBA miss Kobe as well and continue to pray for his family. Finally, let's talk about the next chapter, the next segment of the Kevin Durant soap opera drama. As we know, last week he announced he wanted to be traded from Brooklyn. Early on, it seems that the 2 teams that were favorites were Miami and Phoenix. But people have been talking about KD. I love this. I mean, he said, he was surprised, but then he realized KD's a runner. He's a track star. He's gonna run away when things get hard. That's a pretty strong quote. But I gotta look at it and think, he's not totally wrong there. Other people have come out and said some things about KD. Said that he and Kyrie Irving, said that Vince Carter and Akeem Olajuwon, which most people didn't even remember, played together. That they played more games together than Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, which of course is a knock on both of them. And then other players, I think it was Skip Bayless, who came out and said that KD saved Steph Curry's legacy, which I don't agree at all. Steph Curry's legacy was just fine. Kevin Durant had nothing to do with Steph Curry's legacy. But Skip, that's okay. You got your opportunity to say what you want to say. What's your take on all this buzz about KD, and is he finally going to end up with another team this week?
Well, first of all, Shannon Sharp's quote is actually from a song called Track Star that came out last summer. That's for one.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I do agree with him, though, on that for the simple fact, you were up against Golden State. You had one more game to win this series when you were in OKC. They beat you. Yes, it was the weakest move, I thought, in sports history. If you can't beat them, join them. You're saying you don't like to play with Russ. You can't win with him. He's an animal. He's a maniac. He's going 100 miles per hour. You and many other people thought, okay, Russell needs to give the ball to KD. He's the MVP. Whatever. He goes there. They win the championship. 2 years in a row, 2 finals MVPs. Golden State won a championship and beat Cleveland without him. Year after that, Cleveland beat them. LeBron, Kyrie hits one of the biggest clutch shots in finals history. I don't think he made Steph's legacy, though. Steph became the greatest shooter of all time when I was in college, even before these records already. He was already set at that. And then now he finally wins a finals MVP. And it's without him also, too. So they've won 2 championships without Kevin Durant. Draymond said, yes, they would not have beat Cleveland again if he did not come. Maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. I don't know. But to sit here and say he made his legacy, you clearly see what he's done as a shooter, being a top 5 and now #1 shooter of all time, with Clay being a top 5 shooter of all time, with Draymond, who was a future Hall of Fame, the defender. He is a modern day Dennis Rodman. I disagree with that. And again, it doesn't take anything away from Kevin Durant, his ability to score the basketball at 6'11". And I know you think he still needs to win another championship also. I did disagree with that. We'll see what happens. But no, Skip, you're wrong. That's your former colleague right there.
Right.
Love him to death. I never met him. You know him better than a lot of people do. But that's just him. But no,
I love Kevin Durant's talent. I mean, he is a unicorn. He is a unique talent in the game. Right now, though, I'm concerned about his own legacy. I'm concerned about how people are going to remember him as he continues to bolt from team to team, kind of in search of a he's like Renner talent, and to try to in search of a ring, but really not staying anywhere long enough to cement a legacy. He might win another title if he goes to the right team. I would hate to see him go to Miami and have them lose Jimmy Butler. That's almost totally reconfiguring a team that was 1 game away from the finals. That's a big risk. If you can keep Jimmy Butler and make this move, which I don't know if you can, I would say, okay, take that shot. But I wouldn't give up Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is the heart of that team. Yeah. He is a Heat player. He embodies the Heat. I don't know if Kevin Durant embodies their style, their defense first style. I don't think that he embodies that. So I just don't think it's a great move for Miami to bring in Durant. He doesn't fit them, but I'm sure he wants to go somewhere where he's going to have the opportunity to win a title. Maybe by next week, we'll know which uniform Kevin Durant will be wearing in this upcoming season. So lots going on. Great talk as usual, Edwin. Thanks for joining me. We'll just keep our eye on the headlines to see what moves are being made. Once again, a busy week, Edwin. It was great sharing it with you, talking about it, discussing it, digesting it. We'll see what happens in the upcoming week, see where Kevin Durant's going to end up, see what happens with the World Games, and who knows what the sports world will bring to us. So until then, what do we tell people to do, Edwin?
Keep balling.
That's right. We love you. Thanks. Peace.